Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're kind of turning the page on mysteries that, honestly, for years, seem like they'd just never be solved. We often get into really complex stuff here, lots of gray areas, But this time, we're focusing on those moments. The ones that are sometimes really satisfying, sometimes, pretty chilling, when questions that have been hanging around forever finally get answered. We've gathered our info from, all over online videos, news reports, deep investigative summaries. They all bring these really compelling stories of resolution to light.
Exactly. And it's not just, the basic whodunit. I think for us, the really interesting part is the how it was solved. It's just remarkable sometimes the sheer cleverness, or maybe just a stroke of pure luck. Or sometimes you won't believe it, but it's the killer's own incompetence that breaks the case. We're really going to dig into those aha moments, the ones that turn these cold cases around.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a case that seriously shook the tech world. A story of incredible success, cut short so brutally. And the solution, it came incredibly fast. Talking about the murder of Fahim Saleh. This guy, people called him the Elon Musk of the developing world, a real prodigy. Started business in high school, then co-founded these multi-million-dollar companies in Bangladesh, Nepal, Nigeria. By early 2020, he had this venture capital firm in Manhattan, estimated net worth around $150 million. Seemed like he had everything going for him.
Yeah, everything. But that apparent security just vanished. July 14th, 2020. Fahim's sister goes to check on him. His New York apartment, $2 million luxury place. Neighbors heard screams he wasn't picking up. And when she gets inside, that metallic smell hits her. And she finds, it must have seemed unreal at first, Fahim's torso, dismembered, his head, arms, legs, all severed, putting garbage bags nearby. And right next to them, an electric power saw still plugged in. Investigators knew instantly, the killer was interrupted mid-cleanup. Probably heard her coming, fled out the back.
Wow, so the killer was basically still there, or just left. That's incredibly close. Do investigators often get that kind of break? Finding a scene so fresh. The tech world, as you said, totally shocked. Theories just flying organized crime, robbery gone bad. But the detectives, they went straight to the building's security footage. And that was key. CCTV showed Fahim coming into the building, and with him, a guy dressed head to toe in black, mask, briefcase, the whole deal. They get into the private elevator, key secured, goes right to Fahim's apartment, and just as the doors open on his floor, you see a struggle. The guy forces Fahim into the apartment.
And what's really amazing here is just how fast this was solved, incredibly fast. Just 3 days later, July 17th, Fahim's own assistant, Tyrese Haspil, arrested, charged with the murder, and the motive came out pretty quick. Tyrese had been caught stealing about $90,000 from Fahim. But Fahim apparently was known for being, really a nice guy. Generous, understanding, especially with younger staff. So instead of calling the cops, he gave Tyrese a repayment plan, a chance to avoid charges.
And Tyrese repaid that kindness by masking up, following him home, using a taser, stabbing him multiple times, then using the electric saw he brought in that briefcase to dismember the body. That calculation is just chilling.
It is chilling, but, if we look at the bigger picture here, Tyrese was, let's be honest, far from a criminal mastermind. He used his own credit card for the saw and the taser, both found at the scene, right?
Yeah.
And the serial numbers linked straight back to his purchases. Plus, there's CCTV of him buying them and cleaning supplies. He didn't have a worry in the world. It really shows how these digital footprints, CCTV, credit cards, they leave trails now. Trails that even someone trying to be clever just can't seem to erase. You see how important digital forensics is becoming? Solving cases so much faster, it often just reveals a surprising lack of planning, in this connected world. Despite all that, Tyrese pleaded not guilty.
Okay, so if the Saleh case highlights speed and digital evidence, our next story, it's the opposite. It stretches across almost 50 years. A truly haunting saga that defined cold case for a generation, the hunt for the Golden State Killer. He had so many names, didn't he? Each one reflecting how his crimes just got worse and worse. Started as the Visalia Ransacker back in 73, 75, broke into maybe 120 homes, vandalism, stealing small things, then murder, then late 70s Sacramento, he becomes the original Night Stalker. Escalated to sexual assaults, he'd tie up the men, assault the women, had that weird signature stacking dishes on the man's back. Later in Southern California taking lives, they called him the Diamond Knot Killer. Took ages for police to realize this was all one guy. Finally, Golden State Killer.
And the scale of his terror, it was immense. 13 murders confirmed, over 50 sexual assaults, spread over 13 years, all across California. People say he's one reason Americans really started locking their doors at night, created this widespread fear. And he'd taunt the police, phone calls, saying they'd never catch him. pretty striking how one person could just evade capture for so long, adapt his methods, terrorize so many different places.
And then after 13 years, around 1986, it just stopped abruptly. Maybe the pressure got too much, or he just stopped. Who knows? But investigators, they never stopped looking. Decades went by. Too much damage done to just let it go cold forever.
Right. And the breakthrough, when it finally came, was all down to DNA.
Yeah.
Advanced DNA analysis, that's how they first definitively linked all those different crime sprees. Visalia, Sacramento, Southern California. But catching him, that was something else. It happened because of public genealogy websites. GED Match. Turns out about 20 of his distant relatives had uploaded their DNA for family tree research, Detectives managed to link crime scene DNA to these relatives, and from there they built this incredibly complex family tree, working backward, narrowing it down, and it led them straight to one person, a perfect fit for the profile. After 45 years of searching, Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer.
That's just incredible, using genealogy databases like that.
Yeah.
But what about the ethics? I mean, you upload your DNA to find your ancestors, and suddenly the police are using it to catch your third cousin twice removed from murder. Is that a big debate now?
Well, absolutely. It was a massive shift, not just a breakthrough. It changed everything for cold cases.
Yeah.
And it raises huge questions about privacy, about consent. When your shared DNA, something you gave willingly for one purpose, can suddenly point law enforcement to a relative involved in serious crimes. It's powerful, no doubt. Brings answers to cases everyone thought were lost forever. But the debate around it's definitely ongoing.
So DeAngelo, arrested in 2018, he pleaded guilty, didn't he? 26 charges, avoided the death penalty that way, 74 years old, sentenced to 11 life sentences back-to-back, no parole, he'll die in prison after all that time. Closure for so many people must have been immense.
Now, while the Golden State Killer operated in the shadows, our next case, it involves a different kind of horror. Someone hiding in plain sight, using trust, betraying it horribly. Medical serial killers. There's something uniquely disturbing about them, isn't there? It's that deep betrayal. Using medical knowledge not to heal, but to harm, and then cover it up. It's chilling. And sadly, sometimes other staff, they suspect. They might even know. But often nothing happens until the media gets wind of it or the police step in. It really makes you wonder about the workplace dynamics, how that silence allows it to continue.
Yeah, that silence is terrifying. And that brings us to Daniela Poggiali, a nurse in Lugo, northern Italy. At her hospital, staff started noticing something was wrong. The death rate was climbing, especially among older patients, and suspicions started to fall on Daniela. People noticed things, like she'd apparently sedate patients who were, quote, bothering her. The big tell. Death rate spiked when she was working, then dropped right off when she went on vacation. That's more than just bad luck, surely.
It certainly looked that way. It turned out she was using potassium chloride, poisoning patients. And it's nasty stuff because it leaves the body really quickly, hard to detect unless you're looking right away. There was one really chilling example, Manuela Alki's mother, only mildly ill. Daniela apparently rushed Manuela out of the room, said she was busy. 10 minutes later, Manuela comes back, sees this small glass vial attached to her mom's IV drip. It wasn't there before. The liquid drains fast, her mother starts convulsing, eyes rolling back, and she died. But crucially, a coworker who was already suspicious acted fast, ran tests on the body immediately, found traces of the potassium chloride just in time, and they found a used vial in the disposal. That's what brought the authorities in. They asked Daniela, point blank, how come you were present for 93 deaths in just 2 years?
Okay.
That's like 3 or 4 times the average for other nurses there.
And her answer was?
Just bad luck.
Right.
Just bad luck.
Not very convincing. So she was arrested, and the investigation must have uncovered more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Disturbing stuff. Stealing patients' things. Giving people extra laxatives just to make the next shift difficult. Using sleeping pills to make her own shift easier. And apparently when one colleague threatened to report her, Daniela left a funeral bouquet on her car. A subtle threat.
Yeah.
Sounds like she was really manipulative.
But the most chilling thing, found on her phone, photos. 2 photos of her smiling, laughing, next to the bodies of 2 patients she had just killed. And apparently she acted the same way in court. Laughing, smiling, like none of it was serious. It just shows this complete coldness, this detachment. It's hard to fathom.
And the outcome, I read she was actually released. How does that happen after something like this? Does that say more about the justice system or maybe our strange fascination with these kinds of figures? It's really complex. Yeah, she got life in 2016, but appealed. Released in 2017 on a technicality. She still faces potential charges for other deaths, though. But while she was inside, apparently got loads of fan mail. Even marriage proposals. Seemed to almost enjoy the attention. It's bizarre.
Okay, switching gears a bit. Our next case. Solved by the killer himself, by accident. A really strange turn of events. Back in 1977, Indianapolis, several people vanished. Karen Yill's 24. Her little boy, Robert, just 2 years old. And Sandra Harris, a teenager, 17. This was really alarming, but like you hear sometimes, maybe not totally surprising for the local police back then. There'd been a whole decade of disappearances, lots of suspected foul play. It really looked like they had a serial killer operating. And he was good at hiding the victims. Detectives were working round the clock, just hoping for a mistake, a slip-up. Well, he did more than slip up.
He really did. April 20th that same year, a woman named Harriet Carr notices her garage doors open a crack. Here's the family car running inside. She goes to check, finds her husband, Ted Carr, dead on the floor, carbon monoxide poisoning. She rushes to shut off the car engine, and then she sees it. In the trunk, 3 bodies. 2 women, 1 little boy, Karen, Sandra, and Robert, the missing victims. And there's a vacuum cleaner hose running from the exhaust pipe right into the trunk.
Oh my God, Harriet must have just screamed. Neighbors called the police, I assume, yeah. And when investigators looked at the scene, they found a revolver in Ted's pocket, a handkerchief clutched in his hand. Based on everything, they pieced it together pretty clearly. Ted abducted them, assaulted the women, forced them into the trunk at gunpoint, then used the hose in the car exhaust to kill them.
But here's the twist. The fatal mistake. It seems Ted went back to check, to make sure they were dead. He used that handkerchief, probably thought it would protect him if he covered his nose and mouth, but he completely underestimated the fumes, how potent they were. Opened the trunk, got a lungful and collapsed. Died right there, a victim of his own trap. It's this grim irony, isn't it? But it also tells you something about criminal psychology. That overconfidence, planning the crime meticulously maybe, but missing the most obvious danger in the cleanup or escape, blinded by their own supposed cleverness. It happens more than you'd think. Self-sabotage.
Yo, he literally poisoned himself checking on his victims. That's
right, Dave.
Yeah, a fatal cell phone is right. Grimly ironic is putting it mildly. So, with Ted identified and obviously no longer a threat, the police started digging into his past, right? Looking backward, his background. It was quite something, wasn't it? Lots of awful stuff he mostly got away with, like back in 1947, picking up hitchhikers, handcuffing the guy to a trailer hitch while he assaulted the woman, Jesus, swindling a blind elderly woman, taking a 14-year-old girl to Mexico for immoral purposes. He actually served time for that one, but only 3 years.
Yeah, real piece of work. But the biggest thing they connected him to, potentially, was another cold case from 1967, a decade before he killed himself. Lois Williams and her 17-year-old daughter, Karen. They disappeared. And there were rumors about them and Ted, both of them. The night they vanished, one of Ted's employees saw them leaving Ted's gas station in Ted's car. Next morning, the employee finds Ted outside the station, bloody, looking dazed. Ted claims he was mugged, but tells the employee not to call the police. Nothing was stolen from the station, but Ted's car. It was up on the lift, being pressure washed, especially the trunk. And there's another chilling detail. A night or two after Lois and Karen disappeared, Ted called that employee's wife. She lived next door. He was supposedly in the hospital, asked her to pop over and check if he'd left his garage door open, worried about his tools. But her husband had told her about the car washing incident. She got spooked, said no. Probably saved her life. Another neighbor saw Ted's car parked nearby that night. It looked like a trap.
But Lois and Karen, their bodies were never found. Even after all this came out about Ted. No, never found. Investigators strongly suspect, given Ted was a skilled craftsman apparently, that he hid their remains inside the walls of his house. He did a big remodel right after they vanished, so an answer to who likely killed them, brought about by his own bizarre death, but still no final piece for their family. Eerie. Okay, for our last case. Maybe slightly more hopeful note, though still wrapped in mystery for a long time. This one involves a 27-year Canadian cold case. Solved because a 13-year-old kid liked to swim. Back in 1992, a 69-year-old woman, Janet Ferris, disappeared. She was driving to a wedding in Alberta, got in her car, headed off, never arrived. Her family spent almost 30 years just wondering.
Yeah, just vanished. Until 2019. And the hero, a 13-year-old boy, Max Florenka. He was swimming in Griffin Lake near Revelstoke in British Columbia. He spots something weird at the bottom. An overturned car. Looked like an old Honda from the 80s maybe.
And this kid, Max, he didn't just ignore it. Showed amazing initiative for his age. He told the Mounties, the RCMP, guided them right to the spot, even used his GoPro to dive down and get footage. Proof.
That's right. And based on that, they sent in a dive team inside the car, submerged all those years. They found human remains. Decomposed, obviously. It was Janet Ferris. After looking into it, they ruled out foul play. The most likely scenario, she probably swerved, maybe to avoid an animal on the road, lost control, went into the lake, trapped in the car.
Wow, so just a tragic accident. But finding her, after almost 30 years, Max, just by being curious, solved this decades-old mystery, gave her family closure. Her son said the worst thing was not knowing, and her granddaughter called it a happy story in the end. Just knowing where she was, knowing it wasn't something sinister, that meant everything. So when you look back at all these cases today, it really shows a strange ways truth can come out, doesn't it? We had the digital breadcrumbs leading straight to Fahim Saleh's killer, the decades of painstaking genetic genealogy to find the Golden State Killer, Ted Carr, undone by his own horrifying plan, and Janet Ferris, found purely by chance by a teenager swimming. The outcomes are often so grim, obviously, but there's this strange satisfaction, maybe, in the resolution itself, and finally getting answers to questions that haunted people for so long.
Absolutely, and if you connect this to the bigger picture, these stories, they really remind you, don't they, that even when things seem utterly baffling, totally unknown, the truth has this weird way of surfacing. Sometimes it takes incredible human effort, like with DeAngelo. Sometimes it's sheer luck, like with Janet Ferris. And sometimes, like with Ted Carr, it comes at this terrible final cost for the perpetrator themselves. It kind of challenges you, the listener, to think about what these stories reveal, about human nature, both the darkness and the resilience, about how we cope with the unknown, and about that relentless, often decades-long pursuit of justice, of just knowing.